After leaving the McKinley Chalet and Denali National Park, we arrived in Fairbanks. Having the evening free, we decided to take in the Fairbanks Ice Museum and Aurora Borealis show. The theater has been partitioned down into a U-shaped room with a smaller theater in the middle. The museum portion is filled with different ice sculptures and lighting displays, and is kept at a cold 20 degrees. We were told the museum is owned by two men, one producing all the ice sculptures and the other one running the front office and selling the tickets. We also watched the ice sculptor carve a picture in a block of ice with a hand grinder. Our combo ticket also included the Northern Lights Spectacular by Leroy Zimmerman. This is a presentation of his lifetime work photographing the Aurora Borealis. It was very beautiful, but running 38 minutes just seemed a bit too long. Today, Holland America has us on a riverboat tour on the Discovery III. The 3-hour tour has various presentations along the way, culminating in a visit to the Chena Village Living Museum.
Well, we are currently floating on the Chena River, just on the outskirts of Fairbanks, Alaska. We're about 140 miles south of the Arctic Circle right now, and actually the country's northernmost metropolitan area. And Fairbanks is known as Alaska's Golden Heart City. Heart because we're right in the middle of the state, and gold because, well, we were founded off the back of a giant gold rush. Of course, depending on who you ask, you'll also hear it called the land of the midnight sun. Then as he kind of banks in, turns into it, he'll just kind of drop down out of the sky. Because at this point, he can't actually see the water. He's just operating off years of instinct and feel. Bringing in for a nice, easy, gentle touchdown. And yeah, sure, you bounce a little bit. This isn't gymnastics. Anything you can walk away from up here is a 10. All in all, I think that was a pretty smooth landing.
Well, Chris, let's talk a little bit about 88 Alpha. I believe that Skylar mentioned earlier that it's called a Super Cub, and when we think of bush flying in Alaska, this is the plane that comes to mind. Why is it that most of you prefer this model?
It's just a really versatile airplane. We obviously were on floats today. We put it on big fat tires to go to gravel bars and remote strips in the fall and spring, and then we put it on skis in the winter. We basically have the entire bit of Alaska open to us to explore.
And these planes are often quite old. I think 88 Alpha might be a 1951 model, yet it looks almost brand new, and you fly it day in and day out as a part of your everyday job. Is it difficult keeping these vintage aircraft in the air all these years on?
You know, they were so popular, there was lots of parts made for them, and they're so popular that there's brand new parts being made for them.
Next, we had a presentation on dog sledding at the Trail Breakers Kennel.
When we go out for walks in the woods, we bring the older dogs with us, who of course run way out in front, and the puppies will naturally chase after them. And so after they've been out there for a while, running around, having fun, then we call the older dogs back, who being so well trained, they run right to us, and the puppy chases them back. The younger dogs are learning a couple things. Number one is they're learning just to listen to my voice, which is very important, of course, when we're teaching commands. But the second thing they learn is to always follow the example of those older dogs, because those are the dogs that ultimately bring us all safely home, and they need that skill to harness for the first time.
Looks like a great run today. All right, and he gives them the command, and away they go. And notice, folks, how much quieter it just got. And all the energy and enthusiasm turns right into dog power.
Here we are on the far side of the lake, flying along. These guys are going about 20 miles an hour, which is remarkable when you consider there's only 7 dogs, and the four-wheel and I weigh over 600 pounds, so this is an amazing athletic achievement. But the reason they can do it is because the older dogs have taught the younger dogs the value of teamwork. I'm going to give them a command. I'll call you on the way back.
All right, now you hear that HA command. That's for left. G is for right. And those commands actually come from driving mules on a farm. Other commands include hike or all right to get them started. They don't actually say mush. That was from an old radio show. And then whoa to stop, but they don't like that one too much. Kind of just say whoa and hold on and pray. Looks like Dave is finishing up his run here.
Whoa.
All right, another fantastic run this morning from Dave Monson.
This is actually always my favorite time of the day, to come out here to the mouth of the Chena and look out over the Tanana River Valley here and just observe any changes that may have been taking place over the last couple days. And what we've seen really over the last week and a half to 2 weeks is extremely high water out here on the Tanana River, and that's been due to the warm temperatures we've been having the last couple of weeks.
And it's easy to tell where one river ends and the other begins. You just look at the water. Because the Chena is all spring and runoff fed. It picks up muck and bacteria as it goes. It's got this dark brown color going. But the Tanana is the largest glacier-fed river in the world. And those massive glaciers advance and retreat, and they grind the mountain rock underneath them into a fine silt, finer than baking flour, which all stays suspended in the water, making it very light and milky. And you can see this directly ahead of us and off to our right here as these two waters mix. And what kind of looks like we just threw a bunch of half and half into the world's largest cup of coffee.
We then thought we saw a herd of wild caribou coming out of the forest.
Well, isn't that a coincidence? No, we knew that they'd be there. These are friends of ours. So as we get a little closer, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce you all to Reindeer tyrannus. The domesticated variant you see right here is the reindeer. And because these guys are the same genus and species as their wild caribou cousins, they've got all the same evolutionary traits, which is why we like to trot them out and show them off. Eventually they'll cross one of our over 3 million lakes. Yeah, 3 million. Minnesota, eat your heart out. They float right across the top, easy as can be. And they do it quickly, in case any predators are after them, thanks to those big flat split hooves they've got. Those make excellent paddles, a half-decent snowshoe, but most importantly, they make a good shovel. Because this is a grazing deer, folks, but it lives in a part of the world where lunch is buried under snow 6 months out of the year. So they'll use those to tunnel down, get at that moss or lichen buried underneath, which is actually where they get their name. Caribou is a Mi'kmaq native word that roughly translates to the deer that paws at the ground or the deer that shovels. I also like to point out those big antlers they've got, because both the males and females grow those. This is the only species of deer where that normally happens. Okay, you've noticed how much we love that fish up here. And they're running right now, coming out of the oceans into the freshwater streams, which means native families all around our state along our rivers are at their fish camps. Of this device that we have up at our fish camp called a fish wheel, because this really is a genius invention. It's basically a giant water wheel. It's powered by the current, but it's got these big curved baskets attached that face and rotate downstream, so the salmon swimming upstream get caught in the basket. And then the big wheel just keeps on turning. It scoops them up out of the water. As it goes, the salmon kind of slide around the curved outside of the basket till they get close to the axle, where there's an angled chute that just kind of slides them out the side into a receiving basket. It's a great way to catch enough to prepare for yourself and family when you've got winter staring you in the face.
This area is similar to many Athabascan fish camps along the Tanana or Yukon River during the summer months. Each summer, families would pack up and head up to 30 miles away from the village to their family's fish camp. The canvas wall tents is where they would stay each summer. And closer to me are the outdoor air drying racks. This is where they hang the salmon before they go into the smokehouse, the large permanent structure you see behind me. The smokehouse is a key to turning the salmon into a lightweight, dehydrated, fully preserved food source. Once the salmon was smoked, it would be stored in a cache, the little building next to the smokehouse. It's up on stilts to keep any animals from getting into it. But speaking of animals, the boxes you see between the tents are dog houses. We would bring our dogs to camp to act as a natural alarm if any larger animals came towards camp.
Right, you definitely don't want a bear or fox sneaking in, taking all of your hard work. And speaking of working at, I can see you've done some on the fish out in front of you. What type of salmon did you say that was again?
This is a silver salmon. And here in the interior of Alaska, we get 3 types of salmon. We get a single run each of the king and silver, and 2 runs of the chum. Because the chum are slightly lesser quality, we usually reserve them for the dogs. And the process I've started here is a basic dog food cut. I started by removing the head and separating the 2 fillets from the backbone, leaving them connected at the tail so I can then hang them up on the drying rack.
Now, what is it that you're doing with those fillets right now, Annette?
Right now, I'm scoring the salmon, which is making diagonal cuts through the flesh down to the skin. Scoring creates more surface area on the fillet, allowing the smoke to work deeper into the salmon and further dehydrate it.
That is beautiful. And now, you mentioned you don't put it straight into the smokehouse from here. Why is that?
Well, we don't like to put a wet, drippy salmon directly into the smokehouse because it could mold. So it will hang up here on the drying rack until it stops dripping and has a nice sheen or glaze on it. And then it can go into the smokehouse. This process is for the dogs. So once the salmon is inside the smokehouse, it would be rotated around inside for up to 2 to 3 weeks.
How would you prepare it if it was for you or me to eat?
First, we start off with a higher quality king or silver salmon, and then we would wash it very well. We also like fillets, but we cut ours into long vertical pieces called salmon strips. Next, we would soak it in a brine. My family likes to use brown sugar and salt. Then the salmon would be hung up onto the racks and be put into the smokehouse, but for a shorter amount of time than for the dogs, maybe just a few days so it could have a softer texture. Finally, we like to use a different wood to smoke our salmon. We like to use alder or cottonwood because they give the salmon a sweeter taste. For the dogs, we use spruce, driftwood, whatever we find really. They're not very picky.
No, I'm sure they're happy with every bite they get.
And then here I have the muskrat. And I know the muskrat doesn't look like much, but its fur is very warm. And they typically use them to make a nice warm winter parka. It would take about 40 to 60 of them to make one complete parka. And here I have the marten. Marten also had a warm fur, and it was typically used to make a nice warm winter hat. They would put one on each side, then one down the middle. And then they left the tail on for decoration. By any chance, could any folks guess what this next one is?
Mink.
It's the mink. But surprisingly, the mink wasn't that valuable because their fur was too short and it didn't hold that much warmth. So they'd use this to practice sewing skills, or they'd use it as a design. But after Western culture, their name quickly changed to the money pelt. Now my last one here I have to show you is the beaver. And the beaver is a valuable animal because their meat, what I've been told, is really good, and their fur is very warm. Now their fur has 2 layers, a long coarse one and a thick under one, which made him water resistant and really warm. They typically put the beaver at the trail cuffs, mittens, and mucklucks. And if you're curious what mucklucks are, they're like a winter boot.
Around us you can see examples of some of Alaska's largest game animals. Over to your far right is the hide of a grizzly bear. In the middle is the moose, and closest to me is the hide of a caribou. Over here to your left you can see an example of a bull-sized bull moose. He was taken just north of here in the White Mountains and has a trophy-sized 73.5-inch rack. The moose were a very important resource to the Athabascan people. While caribou travel in herds, moose are solitary, tending to travel alone. The hunter would then use a spear to provoke the animal to charge. They would then plant it into the ground at a steep angle like this, and when the moose came charging to stomp the hunter, it would rear up and impale itself on the spear. And then all a brave hunter had to do was roll out from underneath the heavy falling animal.
Melody is modeling an Athabascan Yukon-style women's winter parka. It is all traditional. The main body of the parka is beaver, and as you can see, it's sheared for design. It's trimmed with calfskin, river otter, and timber wolf. But now, she's going to show us the sunshine ruff. Now you see why it's called the sunshine ruff. It does represent the sun. The outer part of the ruff is timber wolf, and closest to her face is Wolverine. Wolverine is always sewn closest to the face because of that natural oil. Now the beadwork designs are passed down mother to daughter, generation after generation. Each family has their own unique design. Some fun facts about it is that it weighs about 23 pounds. It took Dixie about 8 months to make, and it's appraised for $18,000 to $20,000.
The village also had some pioneering cabins that were typical to the area. The Binkley family runs this expedition and has a tradition of running steamboats for 5 generations. This tour has been voted the best boat tour in North America, and I have to agree with them. This afternoon we'll be touring Gold Dredge 8, another Binkley family excursion. But before that, we have a hearty lunch of beef stew and vegetables.